But I am interested in in on a race day, if you have type 1 diabetes and you do encounter a low blood glucose, or maybe your blood glucose is high for whatever reason, maybe you've just done a really intense bout of, uphill climbing or a sprint or something, and your blood glucose is elevated. In those moments, do you think that that does impair performance? I know they don't say as an excuse. They would never say, oh, my diabetes got in the way of me performing really well. But in that moment, have you ever seen somebody have like a low blood glucose that they have to treat on the spot with a glucose gel or something on the bike? And how do you think that would impair or affect their performance?
Without a doubt, it has a huge impact. And there's lots of different scenarios. We can start even just before the race. So when you're on the starting line, nerves come into it. And I don't know if this is something that you've experienced, whether it's in sports or just in daily life, but if you're nervous, your glucose can rise extremely high. And we would see that some of the athletes who struggled with nerves, especially before important races, would have glucose in the high 20s before a race. And then you're left with a decision. And these guys, they mostly manage their own diabetes themselves. They are always the ones who are responsible for this. So there's the whole way through this, there's no credit that I would take for anything like that. Like, these guys are the ones who are managing that. They do it in they talk to their own private endocrinologist, depending on which country they're from. But yeah, in terms of nerves, so somebody's at the starting line, their glucose is 20, you're left with the decision: am I able to fuel like all of the other athletes who don't have diabetes are doing at the start of the race? Because I need the fuel to get me through the race. I need to be taking on the carbohydrates. I can't do that, otherwise my glucose will go higher. I can't inject insulin at this point, because as soon as I start the race, my glucose is going to go kind of through the floor. And that's one example. Another example might be even planning. I've seen it before where there's been an unexpected breakaway. One rider maybe isn't expecting that that's going to happen. Maybe they're a little bit inexperienced at that point. And they go into the breakaway, they expend a lot of energy going through that. And then all of a sudden they see that they are trending low, they're going low. So they try to take on the fast-acting carbs, a few gels, and it just doesn't work fast enough at that point. They've already missed the time point where ideally it would have been planned earlier on. Meanwhile, the other athletes who are next to them don't even have to worry about that at all. It's something that's completely not in their mind. They're just focused on the race, whereas somebody with who's kind of about to experience a hypo. I mean, if you experience a hypo during a race, your race is over. You cannot go low.
Do they get off the bike and treat it, or do they try to just stay on and just hope for the best?
You get through, most of them, they get through the race, but their race is over. Like, they're not going to get a result out of that race. They're basically just turning the pedals to get through.
That's a matter of the physiological, I guess, boundaries, the fact that they don't have the glucose in the blood to fuel muscle contraction and performance over time. Whereas if you look at these rugby league players or rugby union players, when they get a head knock and they're concussed, they're down, the first thing they do is they try and get up, push the doctor away and try and play on. That must be hard if you have a cyclist or an athlete who's actually experiencing a hypo, especially in that competitive mindset or the competitive nature. They want to keep going on. But when, I guess, their health comes first, when do you pull them away from the track? Or are they pretty good themselves at, acknowledging that this is a really serious condition or circumstance? They need to pull themselves out of the race.
Yeah. I mean, they're always completely aware, but I think the thing is, with pro cycling is all about those 1% or those 0.1%, and it's this is why I found the pro cycling so interesting. I think you were basically pairing a condition which is extremely difficult to manage, but relies on all of those kind of tweaks around nutrition, training, behaviors, in order to get that right, alongside cycling. And cycling is, there's not many sports like it, where you've really got to have your nutrition right, you've got to have your training right, you've got to have your weight management right, your strategy right. And if one of those things isn't right, then the other guy is going to win. So if you experience a hypo, you're just not going to be able to compete. Your race is over. It's not even putting you 1% behind. You don't stand a chance.
Yeah, well, after hearing you say that, it's sounds a little ironic that they don't use it as an excuse, because this sounds like a pretty good excuse.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, but then I think, yeah, then you might as well just
It's a mindset.
not do it. It's, yeah.
Right. If you use it as an excuse even once, it'll filter into everything else in your life, and it's just not worth leaning on that. And I think, yeah, I mean, I find exercise in general for the everyday person who's living with type 1 diabetes can be extremely tricky, let alone when you need to have everything in order to win a race or compete. It's just it's such a challenge. It's unbelievable that they're even able to compete on such a high level. I have so much respect for them.